All right, we're about to dive into a really radical reinterpretation of messianic prophecy. See, it comes from a text that claims for like 2,000 years, the world has been looking at prophecy completely wrong. It argues that every single prediction, it's already been fulfilled, just not in the way anybody expected.
For centuries, one of the central critiques of Christianity has been this idea that the Messiah's mission was, well, unfinished, right? The world is still at war, the temple in Jerusalem wasn't rebuilt, the Jewish exiles weren't all gathered. The source we're looking at today, it confronts that accusation head-on.
So this source we're looking at, it actually gives this traditional critique a name, the carnal accusation. And the idea is pretty simple, is that prophecies are just a literal earthly checklist. A physical kingdom, a stone temple, an end to all geopolitical conflict. But the argument we're going to unpack here, it claims that entire premise is just a total misreading of the text.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with what's called the carnal accusation, then look at the spiritual lens this text proposes. From there, we'll tackle the temple, the exiles, and the kingdom, then move on to knowledge, peace, and justice, and wrap it all up with the final assertion.
All right, section 1, the spiritual lens. So according to this source, you can't even begin to understand prophecy without the right tool. It's not about just reading the words on the page, it's about having the right lens to see their true spiritual meaning. And where do we find this lens? Well, kind of surprisingly, it's all in the story of Adam and Eve.
So here's how the source frames it. Think of Adam and Eve. Adam, he represents the flesh, the physical, the earthly, the stuff that doesn't last. But Eve, she represents the spirit, our divine potential, that connection to something bigger. And this simple duality, this flesh versus spirit idea, this is presented as the master key to unlocking everything else.
And this spiritual principle, it's then traced through some really key moments. For example, the source points to the barren wombs of Sarah and Elizabeth as proof that the true lineage was always meant to be spiritual, not just carnal. This whole old way of thinking, it culminates in John the Baptist. His water baptism is seen as the final cleansing ritual of the flesh. So when Jesus is baptized, it's not a cleansing at all. It's the inauguration of a brand new age of the Spirit.
Okay, so with that spiritual lens firmly in place, let's actually apply it. We're going to start with the first 3 big prophecies: rebuilding the temple, gathering the exiles, and establishing that Davidic kingdom.
So prophecy number 1, rebuild the temple. The carnal accusation is super obvious, right? A third physical temple was never built. But through this spiritual lens, the source argues something wild. The destruction of the stone temple wasn't a failure, it was actually a prerequisite. It had to be torn down to make way for the real spiritual temple, which it says is the body of believers.
And this spiritual temple, it even gets a name, New Jerusalem. But here's the absolute crucial point. According to this view, it is not a location on a map. It's a people, a community of believers, a spiritual house, all united in a new covenant.
All right, next up, gathering the exiles. The carnal view, of course, expects a physical migration of people back to Israel. But the spiritual interpretation, it totally redefines exiles. An exile is anyone who is spiritually lost. So the gathering isn't geographic at all. It's a spiritual unification under a brand new banner, which the source calls the Israelite Accord.
And that brings us to prophecy number 3, the Davidic kingdom. Forget about a geopolitical king on some physical throne. This interpretation frames the whole kingdom as a spiritual relationship. The relationship between the groom, which is Christ, and the bride, his believers. The king is a spiritual shepherd, and his throne isn't in some palace, it's built right in the heart of each believer.
So what's the law of this kingdom? Is it some complex legal code? Nope. According to the source, it all boils down to one simple, personal, and incredibly powerful command: follow me. That's it. It's a call to just leave behind all those worldly systems and enter a purely spiritual allegiance.
All right, let's tackle the final 3 prophecies: knowledge, peace, and justice. Now, these are maybe the most abstract ones, and I gotta tell you, the spiritual interpretations here they get genuinely counterintuitive.
So there's this prophecy that the whole earth will be filled with the knowledge of God. And the carnal accusation is pretty easy to make, right? You just look around and say, hello? There's more confusion and godlessness than ever? But here's the twist. The source claims that this new spiritual revelation is the knowledge. All the conflict it creates, the schisms, the arguments, the crises, those aren't signs of failure. They're actually the proof that this powerful new knowledge is spreading and totally disrupting the old ways of thinking.
And this biblical quote is used to hammer that point home. I mean, why would this new knowledge cause so much conflict? Well, because, as it says right here, the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. So division isn't just a side effect, it's the inevitable, even prophesied result of its rival.
Okay, now for the big one, world peace. The source argues that if you ever want to understand this prophecy, you first have to identify the real root of all human conflict, and it's not politics, it's not resources, it's the fear of one single thing, death. And this is where we see that core distinction again. On one side, you have the carnal mind. It's totally trapped by the fear of death, it clings to the physical body, and that leads to all the bad stuff, greed, conflict, war. But the spiritual mind, it's different. It no longer fears the body's end, because it gets that true life is eternal, and it lives in the spirit.
And this brings us to the source's ultimate, mind-blowing redefinition. True world peace isn't about a global ceasefire between nations. No, it is a world within a person, a world where the fear of death has been completely wiped out. That, the source argues, is the real peace the Messiah came to deliver.
Okay, let's bring this all together in the final assertion. The source doesn't conclude with an argument for some future fulfillment. Instead, it makes a really bold claim. The story is already complete. It's already spiritually perfect.
So let's run down the final tally. Through this one spiritual lens, every single prophecy is accounted for. The temple, that's the new body of believers. The exiles, they're gathered under the Israelite accord. The kingdom, it's ruled by the law, follow me. The knowledge, it's this spiritual revelation itself. And the peace, that's the destruction of the fear of death.
And so the source's final conclusion is this: the problem was never a failure of fulfillment. The problem was, and always has been, a failure of interpretation. The big mistake, it says, was looking for earthly, political results from what were always intended to be spiritual blueprints.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty powerful thought. Regardless of whether you accept this specific interpretation or not, it raises a huge question about faith, about texts, and about understanding. It makes you wonder, what happens to a story we think we know so well when we suddenly look at it through a completely new lens?